Hey guys, before I get started on this episode, the Golden State with Mates Patreon has a new lower price, $2.99 and $4.99 per month memberships, where you can access up to 5 bonus podcast episodes every week, a daily Warriors newsletter, and get yourself in the draw to win monthly giveaways. I'll leave a link in the description. It would be great if you could go and check it out. Coming up on this episode, a spirited effort from the depleted Warriors, but a 110-107 loss to the New York Knicks on Sunday is their 5th straight defeat. They'll have the takeaways from the 3-point loss, including Steve Kerr's reaction to a Will Richard turnover in the second quarter. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast after the Warriors suffer a 110-107 defeat to the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Few quick takeaways from this one. As I said in the intro there, Golden State's 5th straight defeat. They continue to slide further away, I suppose, from the LA Clippers in the 8th seed and are drawing closer to the Portland Trail Blazers as the 10th seed in the Western Conference. Of course, they cannot fall any further than that. This was a pretty strong display, and I think Steve Kerr said it right after the game, saying he was proud of the effort from the guys that were out there, and I would echo those sentiments. It was good to see the Warriors compete in a game that I genuinely wondered if they would stay within 25 or 30 points, and that's the thing that I've always said while these injuries have been piling up. Like, you can really never fault the effort of this team and the fight and the energy, and just being like, a lot of these teams that are tanking, right? It's so easy for players. And probably easier for coaches to check out. What I would say about the Steve Kerr anger and frustration directed it to Will Richard in the second quarter, I didn't agree with who he directed his frustration and anger at, but I actually did like the passion. I did like the fact that Steve Kerr ripped into a player. That tells me this is a guy who still wants to coach, who is not checked out on the season, who hasn't given up all hope. Because once the head coach gives up all hope, then, of course, it's going to be difficult for the players to follow through and play with the energy and hustle on the court. And it didn't look like a guy who thinks he's only got 15, 16 games left of his coaching career at the Warriors. Of course, Steve Kerr is out of contract, and the closer we get to the end of the season, and particularly once the season ends for Golden State, which I think at this point is likely to happen before the playoffs start. Obviously, they'll have a play-in. Regardless of what happens, they could essentially lose every game from here on in, and they'll still finish as the 10th seed in the West. But that outburst didn't seem like a guy who was going to give it up, I suppose, in 15, 16 games time and walk away. And I actually think the fact that the Warriors have been so crippled by injury here over the past, since Jimmy Butler's torn ACL, right? The fact they've been so crippled by injury probably increases the likelihood, I think, that Steve Kerr remains head coach of this team, because this would be an incredibly underwhelming, sour way to go out for a guy that is a 4-time championship winning coach. I don't think he's going to be content saying, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to walk away from Steph Curry. I'm going to walk away from Draymond. Maybe Draymond's not even on the team next season, but particularly Steph. I'm going to walk away with the last result being Steph being injured for the absolute majority of the post-All-Star break and not even having an opportunity to compete in the playoffs, right? Because I have no doubt that I think if Steph didn't get injured, and of course, if Jimmy didn't get injured, this would be a playoff team, right? And I think it's one thing to have the manpower, to have the cattle at your disposal and fall short, and then you decide, you know what, we don't quite have it. I don't think I have the energy to get this team to the mountaintop again, or at least, on the path towards it. I'm going to step away. Okay, that could be understandable. I think it would be less understandable for him to walk away after what we're seeing right now, which is a Warrior team that just had to sign Omer Yurtseven to a 10-day contract yesterday because they almost entered this game with only him as their center option. There was a chance he was going to start that game for the Warriors, a guy they signed less than 24 hours ago, because you had no Draymond Green, no Al Horford, no Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis will be back tomorrow, we assume, against the Washington Wizards, resting on the first night of a back-to-back. And then Quentin Post was questionable for this game with an ankle sprain. So Omer Yurtseven was nearly the only center on this Warrior roster. They had 10 players available, which was actually more than I thought they would. But obviously that includes all their two-way guys in LJ Cryer, Nate Williams, and Malachi Leones, who got his first career start in this game. You're starting Pods and Richard and Leones and Santos and Post. And again, I expected this to be probably a 20, 25 point loss. I was fully prepared for it. And it was actually disappointing in the end that they didn't get reward for effort. That unfortunately their execution in terms of turnovers didn't quite lead to them being able to maintain, obviously, a 21-point lead in the second quarter. So really unfortunate and disappointing after being up by 21 in the second quarter and having control of the game and just outplaying and outworking. Outworking is what I would say. They were outworking the Knicks in the first half. The Knicks look like a team who rolled up, and this can happen, right? We've seen this happen to the Warriors. Remember games earlier in the season where they lost to the Bucks without Giannis, right? Like that kind of performance. And then they lost to the Pacers the following game. And, both those teams ruined by injury a little bit. And the Warriors were a team in that situation who were in the same position the Knicks were in this game, where it's like, oh, we're just going to roll up, and we know we're going to win because we've got more talent in the opposition. So we're not going to worry too much about really bringing 110% effort, right? Well, that was the Knicks in the first half. And if anything, it actually, kick-started them into action a little bit, because you saw third quarter, Karl Anthony Towns gets a little bit more aggressive Cat was basically invisible in the first half, did absolutely nothing. And then second half, a bit more aggressive trying to score the ball, a bit more aggressive just on the boards and being a presence in the paint. So it kind of kickstarted the Knicks into action, and then you thought, okay, they're probably going to take over here. But in fairness to the Warriors, they continued to battle in the fourth quarter, and they had an opportunity at the end of the game, right? You had Brandin Podziemski grab a rebound, go the length of the floor, pull up for a three in transition with less than 20 seconds to go, fall short. If that goes in, the Warriors lead by 2. Okay? And look, Reggie Miller said on the broadcast, I don't mind the shot. I didn't mind the shot necessarily. Went into a step back, it ended up fairly. I think Brunson was the defender, so it wasn't as if you were against a good defender. Maybe that means, okay, you probably should have attacked in that situation, maybe drawn help, got a catch and shoot three instead, or try to finish something around the rim. Who knows? Pods played a reasonable game. We'll talk about him. We'll talk about him more in a second. And then obviously you play the foul game a bit. Pods hits a layup, and unfortunately the Knicks just didn't miss their free throws. They went 4-4 in that little stretch, and then the Warriors have a chance. Mike Brown gave them a chance because he didn't want to foul up 3. And unfortunately, the Warriors, in what really is just a representation of the game, turned the ball over on the final possession, didn't even get a shot up to potentially hit a game-tying 3 and send it to overtime. So they lose 110-107. Again, disappointing, but as far as losses go, perhaps one of the best losses you could possibly have, because you didn't expect to win this game anyway. You get some individual positives, which I'll get into in a second. And you come away feeling a little bit better about yourself, honestly, despite this now being a 5-game losing streak. That should end in Washington tomorrow. It feels like the Warriors punted this game in New York thinking we're probably not going to win it anyway, so why play Melton? Why play Porzingis? We'll keep them for the Wizards game and just make sure we win that one. So assuming they're going to go on and do that. But the rest of the road trip obviously looks pretty difficult. With Atlanta in there, Detroit, Boston. That's rough, right? That's rough. And now the Warriors are, 3 games below 500 with 15 games remaining. Again, it looks likely here that they are going to finish at best as the 9 seed. We'll see if Steph comes back. Al Horford and Seth Curry obviously suffering injuries in Friday's loss to the Timberwolves. They're going to be out at least a week here, which is another 4 games, essentially. Seth with the adductor strain, Horford with the calf strain, both on mild ends of the spectrum with that, which is the good news, I suppose. But still, the Warriors can't really be copping too many more injuries here. But we'll wait and see, obviously, what happens over the next 15 games before the end of the regular season. In terms of Steve Kerr and his outburst at Will Richard, again, I mentioned before that I disagreed with it. And I disagreed with it because I think all of us, or at least most of us, would see that was Pods' fault in that situation. Will Richard gets a steal, leaks out. Pods just has to hit him, right? Just has to hit him in stride for a dunk or a layup. Instead, he throws it a bit too far ahead of Will, who I think, again, he had momentum, obviously, running. I do think he could have grabbed that ball and stopped. I don't know. Obviously, he didn't. He felt like he had too much momentum. He couldn't stop, so he grabbed the ball and then was like falling out of bounds. Threw it back. It kind of ricocheted. There was like 3 Knicks players there with Pods, and like Pods ricocheted off his leg and went out of bounds. So Steve ends up getting incredibly frustrated at Will. Basically yells at him, the ball is everything. OG Anunoby hits a wing 3, and then Steve immediately calls a timeout and continues to go at him. I thought that was unfair because, again, I think the execution of Pods' pass in that situation was diabolical. Really, that looked like an easy transitional layup or dunk, and he just threw it too far ahead of Will Richard. So that was disappointing. It was one of, I would say, 4 really bad passes from Pods in the first half. Like, he had a couple where he was trying to swing it to the corner. One on the left-hand side where I think he was on the right-hand side. He tried to throw it over to post on the left-hand side, threw it over his head. Had another one where he was trying to hit a guy in the corner, and the guy was kind of not quite in the corner, whether was Pods' fault or actually the player not quite being in the right spot. Who knows? But Pods ended up with 4 turnovers for the game, and I think all of them potentially. I'm assuming that one that Richard committed, that doesn't actually go against Pods, so it probably should have, though. Really, when we're looking at it, just overthrowing what was a pretty simple one in transition. So, look, I didn't agree with Steve having a go at Will like that because I didn't think it was his fault in that scenario. But what I would say is that I like the passion from Steve. I like the fact that he's really coaching hard because that doesn't suggest that he's given up on the season or given up on coaching this team full stop with his contract expiring at the end of the season, and obviously doubts and uncertainty over his future with the franchise. In terms of some of the individual positives from this game with the Warriors, look, I know Pods will do stuff that frustrates people, absolutely. I still believe he gets a bit of a bad rap among fans, and his production post the All-Star break here has been pretty good. Like, he's like 17 points a game. He's like 8 rebounds, nearly 5 assists. The shooting numbers are reasonable. Like, he's 8 of 15 in this game. Again, there were some turnover issues in the first half and some bad passes, absolutely. But the unfortunate thing about this is that Pods continues to get a bad rap just based on reputation. And there's a couple of reasons. There's a couple of things here. First of all, if we talk about Steve Kerr's outburst to Will Richard, well, people will use that, right? Got nothing to do with like Will Richard, but people will use that as a display of, oh, well, Steve Kerr loves Pods, right? And he just doesn't want to yell at his boy. Okay. And that instantly goes like against Pods, even though Pods doesn't really have any impact on how Steve Kerr reacts in such a situation. Now, obviously, I think Steve should have been having a go at Pods in that situation. But like, Pods doesn't pick and choose who Steve Kerr gets angry at, right? So I don't think we should necessarily have a go at him for that and say, oh, well, look, he's Kerr's boy, that kind of thing. And then secondly, he had some comments on Saturday, which I think Joseph Dicus tweeted out on social media saying that it's a blessing in disguise with all the injuries and stuff like that, because it allows obviously extra opportunity for him and others, an opportunity to try and build confidence. And if you look at the replies to that post, again, like just a bunch of fans in the comment section just ripping in to Pods and saying, well, hang on, why don't you understand the reality of the situation? And say, and basically state that it's really unfortunate and that the reality is that we're wasting another year of Stephen Curry, who's just turned 38 years old. In saying that, I don't agree necessarily with that criticism, because I think a lot of young players, particularly young players, even older players that are, on the edge of a rotation or whatever else, but a lot of young players specifically would actually, you want to try and be positive, right? In tough situations like this, you want to try and spin a negative into a positive. Okay. I think that's right for coaches, players, anyone in the media, right? You don't want to make things more negative than what they already may be. So I think a lot of young players in this situation would say, yeah, you know what? It is a really big opportunity, right? It is an opportunity for me and Guy and some of the two-way guys to really play heavy minutes to develop. Okay. And I think if that was Guy Santos, or if that was, because let's be honest, Guy, torn ACL for Jimmy Butler, okay, crap for the team. Obviously ruins the Warriors' chances at a championship. In terms of Guy Santos and his NBA career and his ability to make millions of dollars in the future, Jimmy Butler's torn ACL, blessing in disguise. Okay, and it absolutely is, right? So I understand the criticism, Pods perhaps should keep things to himself at times. I just think if Malavai Leones or Nate Williams had that exact direct quote as Pods, I don't think people would bat an eyelid. But because it's Pod, because of his reputation of being a bit outspoken, having some outlandish thoughts on who he can become as a player, right? We immediately jump on things and criticize him, even when I don't think this quote directly was actually warranting the criticism that it received if you look at the replies on that post on social media. So I think he continues to get a bad rap. He continues to play pretty well after the All-Star break. 25 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals in this game, right? 8 of 15 shooting from the floor. Really like some of his finishes around the basket in this game, going onto the other side of the rim on a couple of layups against Karl Anthony Towns to ensure that Cat couldn't get to it. Had that really nice finish off glass where he blew by and just kissed it high off glass for the finish in the fourth quarter. So again, a good game from Pods. And I don't if people think otherwise, did he make mistakes? Yes, he made mistakes. Guess what? Played 37 minutes. I can guarantee you, when Steph Curry plays 37 minutes, and I'm not trying to compare Pods to Steph. Don't take that. But any player, star player or role player who plays 37 minutes is going to make mistakes. That's sport, right? You cannot be great 100% of the time. You simply can't. The great ones obviously execute at an incredibly high level the majority of the time. But even we've seen Steph, right? How prone is Steph to silly turnovers? We've been complaining about it for years. Okay. Now, he's allowed to do it a little bit more, and we're a bit open to it because it's he does so much great, right? That you can kind of put aside some of the silly turnovers and stuff he has. But no one's going to have a flawless game, right? No one's going to have a flawless game. And so I thought Potts played well, withstanding the 4 turnovers and some of the poor passes in the first half. Guy Santos, again, continues his development and continues to really impress. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 assists. He has got special footwork, really special footwork. The amount of times he had a turnover late in the game when the Warriors were down 1 and had a chance to take the lead. He had a turnover where he had Shamet, and I thought, geez, he's going to cook him again here. Because anytime I saw Shamet on Guy, I was like, think he can get inside here. And he had one the previous possession where he dribbled on him and then stopped, stepped through, layup. I was like, how many of those did he have in this game? Finished 7 of 12 shooting from the floor, 2 of 4 from three-point range. This is why he's so efficient, because he can actually get himself open layups. Not by an unbelievable burst of speed or anything like that, but by having quite incredible footwork. Those guys, Reggie Miller, guys that probably wouldn't be tuned in on the broadcast, wouldn't be tuned into every Warrior game. They were salivating at some of Guy Santos' footwork and the ability for him to step through and create open layups and opportunities almost out of nowhere at times. So that's a real, like, his confidence, like the fact that he's got the audacity to try some of this stuff just wasn't there previously. It was like, this guy's a real role player, right, who's just out there to hustle hard and rebound, play some defense, hit an occasional open three. Now, again, because of the injuries, he's gained some real confidence to the point where it's like, yeah, I'll try and dribble against the guy off the perimeter. And obviously, I don't necessarily have the burst to go by too many guys, but you know what? I've got size, so if they're a bit smaller than me, I'm going to get to the paint, and then I'm going to use my footwork to get an open layup, essentially, or to draw another defender and kick it out. He had 7 assists in this game. Like, just a really good player. And that contract that the Warriors got him on a couple of weeks ago continues to look fantastic. So, Gee and Pods and Moody unfortunately got injured, but those 3 guys have been pretty good, it must be said, since the Jimmy injury, and more specifically for Gee and Pods since the All-Star break, obviously. And then Quinton Post, I want to give some credit to QP because I think we've all been reasonably underwhelmed and disappointed with his second year. It started out reasonably well because it looked like he'd shown some real improvements and strides on the defensive end with his rim protection and interior defense. The 3-point shot just hasn't come around. Before this game, he was 32.9%, I think, from beyond the arc. And he's been dealing with his ankle sprain. The fact that he got out there, I think, was obviously a huge positive, just giving the Warriors a starting center, not having to start Yurtseven in his first game less than 24 hours after signing. So the fact that he even got out there was a positive. And this was actually one of his better performances of his career, right? 22 points, a career high, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. I'd still like him to get more boards, but whatever. I don't want to complain too much because, again, this is one of his better performances. 22 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 blocks, 9 of 16 shooting from the floor, 4 of 10 from 3-point range. Did have 4 turnovers, which, again, is a problem. You shouldn't be a starting center, and particularly one that doesn't handle the ball or anything, or, they don't generally go to Quinton Post in the post too much or anything like that and run plays through him too much. So you shouldn't be turning the ball over 4 times. Again, not a flawless game, but a damn bloody good one, really, from QP. And I want to give him some credit because, again, we've been slightly underwhelmed by his performances in recent times. And obviously with the Porzingis acquisition, with Porzingis, Horford, and Draymond available, QP kind of gets squeezed out and has got a couple of DNPs and whatnot. Good for him to get an opportunity to play big minutes. He played 35 and a half in this game. That, I'm assuming that has to be a career high as well. So for him to get that much opportunity and to capitalize on it, kudos. Kudos to QP. Good performance. And on the other end of the spectrum, because we're talking about 3 young guys there, but another guy I want to give a shout out to, Gary Payton II. Some of these guys are playing for contracts next season, right? And I think a lot of us would look at GP2 and think, like, I was surprised he came back this season, to be honest. I thought he was a guy the Warriors might move on from. And I've had that feeling probably for 12 months now. It's like, I just think for the Warriors to go to the next level, I think a guy like GP2 probably shouldn't be part of this team. And if he's going to be on the team, he shouldn't be part of the roster. The rotation necessarily. But I will give him credit and say, these guys are playing for contracts next season. He's stepping up. 19 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals off the bench. Picked a couple of guys, some of his defense was a bit better in this game. And then offensively, went 3 of 6 from 3-point range. Actually, it was kind of and it's the same with a lot of these guys, right? It's like, well, Steph's not out there. Okay, Jimmy's not out there. So if I'm Gary Payton II and I have a open 3-point shot, I feel like he's taking it with more confidence because he's like, well, what else are we going to get? If I'm open, and I think a lot of these guys are saying, it's like, if I'm open, I just got to shoot it because the offense isn't good enough to be giving up and not taking 3-pointers, right? Open 3-pointers. So you just got to take them, as opposed to when Steph and Jimmy are out there. It's like, I'm Gary Payton II. I'm a less than 30% 3-point shooter. Maybe I should not take this and then give the ball up and try and get a shot for Steph or Jimmy or something. When in reality, it's like, well, once you think about it in the moment, it's like, should I take this or should I pass it up and try and get Steph a shot or whatever else? Then if you do end up taking it, you're just not shooting it with any confidence, right? So I feel like GP2, again, like a lot of other guys, like if we're getting open threes, you got to put them up. Okay, you do. And it's very rare for Gary Payton II to take 6 3-point attempts in a game. But again, they were all kind of there, right? They were all valid shots to take. And again, without Steph and Jimmy, you might as well take them, honestly. And he knocked some down. So another good game from Gary Payton II. I think he's been good in recent times. So I think I'm going to finish it up there. Again, it's really hard to judge and evaluate too much, obviously, based on the current rotation. And we know this is going to look a lot different, hopefully, by the last 7 or 8 games of the season. Maybe Steph comes back. Porzingis, Melton are going to be back tomorrow. Hopefully Horford, Seth Curry might come back. Draymond's going to be back. So, like, it's judging a performance like this and some of these guys is, it's unfair, really. Especially, like, it's going to look different in a couple of weeks, hopefully. And it will obviously certainly look different come next season. But hopefully, in the meantime, for guys that are going to be legitimate rotation players, even when the more experienced star guys come back, your Pods, your Gee, maybe Post, maybe. Like, this is obviously important still to, as Pods said, take advantage of the opportunity and build some confidence, develop your game. So a reasonable performance from the Warriors. Obviously disappointing with the outcome, but it's probably one of the better losses that you can possibly have. And I suppose, silver lining, it helps their draft lottery chances come later in a couple of months' time. In terms of the other parts of the rotation and some of the bench stuff, again, GP2 played great. Pat Spencer, 22, nearly 23 minutes. I'm not sure I love that necessarily. He had 9 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists. Maybe he wasn't terrible, but I maybe would have liked a little bit more LJ Cryer just for the shooting kind of thing. But then again, the Warriors did shoot 36.8% from beyond the arc. So it wasn't as if they shot absolutely terribly. It wasn't elite either, but that's not really where they lost the game. It was more so the 18 turnovers, which proved problematic and allowed the Knicks back into the game and for them to find some momentum. And as much as Golden State tried to resist in the fourth quarter, they weren't able to execute at the biggest moments. I'm going to finish it up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that'd be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POC252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. Golden State with Mates on TikTok, Instagram, and the Patreon as well. Thanks very much, guys. Warriors play the Wizards tomorrow. Might have a recap after that one as well. We'll wait and see what happens. Obviously, KP, Melton back, potentially Draymond as well. So we're expecting a win. See you next time.